How do you speak to the African Americans or interest groups that want that building removed? What type of conversation would you have for them to understand the relevance or significance of that building, of it remaining where it is?
Well, the building has lots of history, good and bad. The building has, for instance, from an African American perspective, one of the very first merchants under the existing market house was a man called Tom Drake. And he was a meat merchant. And he came under the market house in 1832, shortly after it was rebuilt after the Great Fire of 1831, and dispensed meat under the market house for a period of 50 years, a very notable citizen. And he was a free African American, so he was dispensing meat as an independent dealer prior to the Civil War and during and after. Roy Parker, the late Roy Parker, he was a local historian that did extensive history into African Americans' involvement in Fayetteville, Cumberland County, attributes African American builders to this wonderful building that is Cumberland County's only national landmark. In fact, one of the current exhibits that we have in the museum is an exhibit on African American builders, and they were these great artisans that were fantastic carpenters and brick masons, stone masons, were able to do a number of things that contributed to the architectural landscape of the community. Many of those buildings, to include the market house, still stand. So we certainly don't want to erase those wonderful contributions. And as it relates to the issue of slavery, which was, and I'll have to say that the market house was never a slave market, ever. It was always town government above, marketplace below. People like Tom Drake dispensed meat, other folks dispensed vegetables and produce, fish, that kind of thing. Slave sales took place in Market Square, pursuant chiefly to indebtedness and estate liquidations, which is still a slave sale. But we don't want to erase that. We don't want to forget that. You always need to have those tangible links to the past so that you can discuss those things. It is pretty hard to point to an intersection and say, well, this happened here, and then there's a drugstore or something else there. You don't have that tangible link to the past. Now, as being the historian here and having the market house open to the public for years and years as a part of this operation here, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of interested African Americans came up, read about the slave sales at both the State House and the Market House, were fascinated, asked questions, very appreciative. We, in the whole run of the Market House being open to the public, never had an incident at the Market House. Very well received by the entire population, because Fayetteville is a highly cultural community. People came from all over. It wasn't settled by people from one country, but a number of different countries. And you take the Irish, for instance, that came here very early. The Irish contributed the oldest Catholic church in North Carolina. You had people from England and Scotland. The Scottish folks were great stonemasons. And our cemetery is on the National Register because of that influence as a great sculptor. So our community, and people can only attend our International Folk Festival to understand the rich tapestry of cultures that existed in Fayetteville. Some came early, some came later. For instance, the Greeks. The Greeks came here about the time of World War I. And when they came, they established a number of restaurants which became extremely popular, some of which have been in family hands for a couple of generations, still very popular type restaurants. The Jewish community When they came here, they by far brought the finest selection of clothing to Fayetteville. So our cultural tapestry is very rich. You never want to eradicate anything like that. I mean, you don't, I think in Syria they started blowing up antiquities and things like that. That doesn't solve anything, and you're eliminating your ability to reach back to the past in a tangible form. We take school children on tours. They go to the market house. We have military tours. We have civic groups. We have people that sign up for tours. And we go to a number of different places. Going to school children in particular, I'll ask groups of children, I'll say, how many of you are interested in history? Few hands will go up. When they have the opportunity to go to different sites, go into old churches, go into buildings like the market house and other historic sites, at the end of the day, I ask them again, how many of you are interested in history? The enthusiasm spikes because they can now see something and relate to something and just have that feel for that history. So destroying historic structures is never the solution.